So let's move south to the United States, and we go to Texas State University, which we have like a shared border with Mexico. So let's see what kind of story have they prepared for us.
Hello and welcome to the campus of Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas. I'm Alex Gibbs.
And I'm Ashley Bowerman. Coming up, we'll learn what it's like adapting to a new culture from some of our foreign exchange students on campus. And we'll see how the proposed border wall could affect wildlife in the Rio Grande Valley.
But we begin with a welcoming for some of America's newest citizens. About 250 people became legal citizens of the United States in a naturalization ceremony in Texas State's LBJ Student Center at the end of March. The immigrants came from 59 countries ranging from Russia to China, Pakistan to Mexico. The youngest person naturalized was born in 2000 in Iraq, while the oldest was born in 1934 and came to the U.S. from Spain. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Services Office drove up from San Antonio to the university to handle the processing and administer the certificates. After taking the oath of citizenship and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, the ceremony was complete. This is the fourth time that Texas State has hosted the ceremony.
For many students, heading off to college is the first big migration of their lives. It's usually packing up the car, making the trip, moving in, meeting new people, but there's always the knowledge that the same trip can be made in reverse, and you can be home whenever you feel like it. But for some students, leaving home to go to school means going to a different part of the world, far from family and friends, and being immersed in a culture that is very different from what they're used to. I had the chance to meet 4 international students doing just that here at Texas State. Every academic year, international students from around the globe leave their countries to study abroad at Texas State University. The students come to gain cultural awareness and get a first-hand look into what life is like as an American.
It's been so different from the university back in Colombia. It's been really nice. People here are really welcoming, and I've experienced lots of new things, so yeah, I'm really happy.
The international students say Texas culture is a lot different from their home countries.
The food, like we eat a lot of crepes, and here it's like burgers or pizza.
Americans don't cook at all. I was so shocked because like in France we have a huge emphasis on like cooking and taking time to eat.
I really surprised that this big campus. Yeah, so in Japan the campus is more small and we don't have any school bus.
At the beginning, there were a lot of stuff that I didn't understand. The academic system here, the way tests are taken, everything is just so different, and it wasn't easy.
Study abroad coordinator Alexandra Sahin says adapting to the new culture can be challenging.
They go through different culture shock stages, and at the beginning it's honeymoon for them. They like everything is new and amazes them. But slowly, after a few weeks, they start feeling homesick, and that's when interaction is very important with the locals and with other international students.
I talk with American students, but also like Japanese students, Australians, so it's really diverse.
As of fall 2018, 557 international students from 67 different countries have migrated to Texas State to study. Sahin says despite our differences, it's important that we embrace the unique aspects of other cultures.
Despite of differences, we have so many similarities. We just need to continue exploring it, and it never stops. Learning never stops.
So what was the most common comment you got from the different exchange students talking about their experience here in Texas?
Absolutely. I remember all of them saying that Texas State culture in particular, we are all very friendly, very warming, very outgoing, and very happy.
Of course, here in Texas, when talking migration, the building of the border wall with Mexico is front and center.
The government has already asked permission from more than 570 landowners in both the Starr and Hidalgo counties in the Rio Grande Valley to survey their land for possible placement of the border wall.
But as Argino Perez found, it's not just people being affected by the border wall expansion in Hidalgo County. He brings us this interview from the National Butterfly Center in Mission, Texas.
One of the reasons we have in the lower Rio Grande Valley the greatest diversity of butterflies found anywhere on the North American landscape is because of the diversity of our fauna. Butterfly species are intimately tied to plant species. Where you have an enormous diversity of plant life, you will have a commensurate diversity of butterfly life.
Although no construction has taken place here at the National Butterfly Center, there has been construction that has taken place in neighboring properties. If that construction were to move from those properties to here at the National Butterfly Center, that could cause devastation to not only the habitats here, but also the wildlife that reside here.
In order to begin the wall construction, they would have to clear about 5 acres of our property. Not only clear it, but pour concrete and their rubberized all-weather road material over it, and then install 24-hour, all-night blitzkrieg lighting. All of those things will eliminate plants and wildlife from the landscape. And then, of course, some of those species that are present and documented here are endangered and threatened species, species that are protected by the National Environmental Policy Act and the Endangered Species Act, but all of those laws have been waived for wall construction. So the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Solid Waste Disposal Act, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, all waived for border wall construction.
That was Gino Perez reporting. The 100-acre center is home to more than 240 of North America's 700 butterfly species. We did reach out to Customs and Border Protection to participate. Through a spokesperson, they declined, citing an ongoing lawsuit between the Butterfly Center and the government.
On July 20th of last year, 5 people were killed and hundreds were left homeless after someone set a fire and destroyed the iconic Village apartments here in San Marcos. Those 5 deaths have been ruled homicides, but 9 months later, police have made no arrests in connection to the fire. As the community here waits for answers, students who lived in the apartments have moved into new places and have started to replace their belongings. But in many cases, the trauma they experienced that night has yet to go away. I had a chance to talk with one such student who is trying to move on from that night with the help of a new friend. It takes real determination and courage to recover from losing everything. But what sets 22-year-old Branson Fairbrother apart is not what he lost, but who became his best friend. This is Molly, Branson's emotional support dog and his hero.
She's a light in my life, and I'm just so grateful for her.
Branson, a Texas State senior, lost his apartment in the iconic Village fire. After quickly having to relocate to a small house outside San Marcos with nothing to his name, his grandmother gave Molly to him as a housewarming gift.
And she's a loving little dog.
So you walk everywhere with Molly?
Yeah, pretty much. We love walking. She's a great walker. She can walk forever. She tires me out sometimes.
But more importantly, during his depression and lonely nights in an empty house on an air mattress, Branson says that his beagle was the only thing that kept him calm.
It took a long time to fall asleep. Every time I would close my eyes and start to drift to sleep, I would just see flames. I didn't realize how much I needed her until I saw her face. And I was so happy to just to not be alone.
Even after losing all of his possessions, Branson says that Molly is the greatest possession of all.
This won't be my home forever. You know, I'm gonna move again eventually, but wherever I go, I'll still have her around.
As the saying goes, home is where the heart is. But to Branson, there's a bit of a twist. Home is where the paws are.
You know, Alex, I actually remember that summer, and I actually had the opportunity to be live on the scene after that fire and was able to talk to people who were directly affected. And it is so touching to be able to see someone have such a positive from such a negative in their lives.
It's a perfect example of how friendship can be the best in the darkest of times. That'll do it for us here at Texas State. We're so glad we could be a part of this. I'm Alex Gibbs.
And I'm Ashley Bowerman. Whether it's day or night where you are, have a good one. And thanks for joining us here at Texas State.
Thank you, Texas State University. So joining me is Texas State University. Hello.
Oh, hi.
Hello.
Sorry, I thought you were about to go right into your first question.
Yeah. So can you show us around?
What, the stories or the
Yeah.
illustrations?
Can you walk us through on how do you come up with your stories?
Well, a lot of it was very much a very fast turnaround. Sorry. As you can see, I'm trying to walk to our Trinity building. A lot of it was very much a quick turn of events as far as getting the story good to go. So I know for my story, I originally had planned to where we were going to do a story on the iconic village survivors. And of course, you guys got to see one of them. Well, I actually had interviews as well as I tried to schedule an interview with multiple different outlets. For example, Iconic Village itself, and then of course the university's housing. Both those interviews canceled on me, as well as we had the other two survivors that also canceled on me last minute. So we literally had Branson as the only interviewer for that story last minute. And it was right when I showed up for that interview where his dog greeted me at the door. And so we went ahead and we shot some of the B-roll footage that you saw of him running around and playing with Branson and so on and so forth. And that's when I kind of realized, wow, we really got a story on our hands. By the way, sorry, I'm out of breath right now. I was trying to get here if possible. By the way, Gino, why don't you come on around? So
in your
that
university.
Was how my story was put together.
Yeah.
This is Gino Perez, who put together the butterfly.
Hello there.
Hi, how are y'all?
I'm fine. How about you?
Good, I'm well.
Yeah. So can you share with us, show us around in your university, maybe? Yeah, I mean, like in the studio. Like I see you're walking inside your school right there.
Yeah, we're just. I mean, I guess we're just in the news room, the KTSW room, which is.
Yeah, so right now we are in what's called the Trinity building, and this is where we have our school newspaper and our school radio station, the University Star and KTSW 89.9. And this is where kind of we learned a lot of our journalistic skills, experience, how to tell stories, stuff like that. But I can go ahead and give you guys a tour around the studio if you guys are down with that.
Yeah, sure. Take us around.
So, again, I apologize. I'm out of breath here. But as you can see, we got the University Star, KTSW 89.9. This is kind of our office area where we have meetings and stuff like that. And when we walk in here, oh, hey, this is where we have our main offices and computers. So this is the sports computer. We've got our social media administrator, and we've got loads of other different departments that we have here. And this whole part down here is the radio station. This is where we have our recording booths. If we ever create any PSAs or promos or anything like that, we'll record in there. We have our little area, which is pretty solid. And then when we walk up the stairs here, we have the new KTSW, as well as the headquarters for the University Star school newspaper. And this right here is our news computer. So whenever we put in stuff to our automation system to go live on air, we'll be using that computer. And then, just for fun, there's Bobcat. That's our school logo, which is pretty cool. I could keep kind of going around, but there's not really much left to show here around the building. But, Texas State's one of those campuses to where it's interesting because it's a beautiful campus, but there's a lot of state, everywhere. The running joke is, by the time you graduate, you'll have calves of steel. And that's certainly a very true statement. I think both of us can attest to that. I'm going to try to turn this sideways so you can see both of us.
Yeah.
There we go. Here. Hey, Gina, why don't you hold on to that while I try to get something to hold onto the back there.
So what do y'all got going on over there?
Yeah. So shall we get back to the migration topic? So So how is the border wall going? Is it set to build?
So
touchy subject, I know.
There hasn't been any construction on where I visited, which was the Butterfly Center. There hadn't been any construction there, but to the neighboring property, there was construction being had, and the people at the Butterfly Center were worried that eventually the construction was going to move there, but they've since then filed a lawsuit against the government to try and prevent that from happening, which, I mean, I don't blame them. It's going to take up, they said, I think 5 to 10 acres of their own land. And so it's pretty brutal over there right now, but they're trying to fight it legally, which is really all they can do. But if the government just chooses to use eminent domain, I mean, they really have no choice. So.
One of the more interesting headlines that's come up just in the past few days was just yesterday we had President Trump come down to San Antonio, which is not even about 45 minutes from San Marcos, and he eventually made his way into Houston. But at the very same time that he had been speaking to some supporters at a fundraising lunch, you had Julian Castro, who's a Democratic presidential candidate, who literally hosted an anti-Trump rally at the very same time that the president had come off of Air Force One. So it was kind of interesting. There's always something new going on every other day when it comes to the border wall situation, as well as the president's impact, especially on border states like Texas.
How's the public taking on the border wall then?
So when I was there, they had a conference or meeting or a rally, whatever you want to call it. They had a meeting that night in Mission, Texas, over what to do. They're all against it. They think that in order to combat the immigration, they need to build more things in that area to prevent people, because it's kind of hard to sneak into a place that's, habited instead of, just all this barren land. So they would rather move businesses in instead of take businesses out to make room for a wall where you can, tunnel under or climb over or, fly over, whichever, have many different options to get over. But they had a meeting, and the meeting was telling people, it was like informing people on their rights. So there could have been illegals there at the meeting, but there was also talking about what you can do to try and prevent this, or to what you should do if you do come in contact with an illegal immigrant. And so there's a lot of information there for those people, and they're not standing. What I noticed is they're not standing idly by, just letting the wall happen. They're actively trying to fight it, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, it's certainly very interesting. When it comes to the issue of immigration, it's such a sensitive and such a touchy subject to where, both sides are going to be at each other no matter what. And what's even more interesting is no matter which side of opinion you might have on it, there's still too many questions that are left unanswered. It's one of those things to where it's hard to really justify and find the facts of the whole situation. So the question is, why are so many people, the claim is that so many millions of people are coming to the United States illegally. Well, then the question is why? And then when it comes to asylum seekers or people who are coming to the United States seeking refuge away from, present danger that they might have in their home country, why are they wanting to take away the rights of asylum seekers? If it's one of those things to where it has to be more thorough background checks, or it has to be one of those things to where just security needs to be done a little bit better, I'm not sure. But in my opinion, and I know this is just my opinion, but there's too many questions that I have on the situation to really kind of take any side. The whole situation itself is just
unfortunate. Is there a certain trend that a certain group of people will go for the border wall and some against? Is there a certain trend of it? Like, does it go by age group or like gender or like university students?
I would say it's basically, your university students, your liberals are the ones that are against the wall, and then you have, but we're in Texas, so which is a conservative state by a long shot, and they are more for the wall. So really it just falls upon political lines, and honestly, I'm the same as you, Alex. I don't know if I've truly decided how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, if it's anything that I can say, we have both conservative and liberal groups, Democratic and Republican groups on campus. So it is kind of interesting to see different sides of the student population that have very distinct thoughts on this situation. But I mean, as Gino had said, Texas centrally is a Republican red state. And around a lot of the border cities, as well as some of our major cities like Austin, San Antonio, particularly Dallas, Houston, those states are definitely going to be leaning more toward the left, more towards the blue, as far as being against the border wall, being against.
So, speaking of President Donald Trump earlier, so is it how it is, as mentioned, like, is it really as President Donald Trump said, Mexico is bringing in drugs and crimes or things like that, based on your observation?
Well, before we continue, let's go ahead and welcome our other anchor from the newscast, Ashley Barrowman. We apologize about trying to get here as soon as possible, but I think we'll go ahead and we'll let you have this question. We're kind of talking about the border situation at the wall.
Okay.
They asked kind of, what was your question again? My mind blanked out at one point.
Yeah, sure. So is it really as President Donald Trump said, is Mexico bringing in crimes and drugs and things like that?
So I think the issue at the border wall is primarily just the fact that we have an influx of Mexicans just coming into our country, and I think Trump sees that as an economic issue for America. I don't really think, we do have a lot of people who come into our country who have crime background, and that is sort of an issue just because, for example, if we have an immigrant coming here from Mexico into the United States, it's going to cost approximately $5,000 for our country as a whole just to, I guess, essentially take care of and house that individual who's coming into our country. But if they're someone who's involved in crime, it's going to cost $30,000 because we have to then put them in jail. We have to incarcerate them. Is that the right word?
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, I think his problem with, if I'm answering this correctly, I don't think it's as much as the issue of, everyone who's coming into our country is someone who's going to be involved in crime, but there has been issues with that, and it's causing our country more economic havoc than I think we're wanting. So,
and yet, what's even more interesting is when you see him at his rallies, and even when you've seen him in his presidential addresses to the nation, he brings up illegal drugs. He brings up the basically them bringing in cocaine, methamphetamines, all kinds of different drugs. But then the question becomes, okay, while I understand while that can be a problem, is that necessarily every single illegal immigrant that comes across the border?
No, and that was my point I was making, was not everyone who comes into our country from Mexico, build the wall, is necessarily crime-related or drugs into the country. A lot of people are trying to escape the difficulties that they're facing in Mexico. There's a lot of drug and crime related issues happening in that country, and they're trying to escape that by coming to America. Unfortunately, we do have those people who are involved in that coming here as well, and I think that's a big issue. And we've had, within trying to get the wall built, we've had several people stopped at the border with pounds and pounds of cocaine, And so it's something that's, I think, has gone on for a long time and that is trying to be prevented. I think that's kind of what Trump has sort of an aggressive way of going about that. But I think the whole point of the wall is just to prevent things like crime and drug-related issues coming into America. So.
Yeah. So, what's the public's take on like separating migrant children from their family?
My opinion on that is, because I can't really speak for the public. I think public opinion is different, just because I think kids in general, when you take kids away from their families or detain them, I think that's just, I would say it's wrong, but I mean it's a moral issue as well as a legal issue, and when you try to break it, you can't really break it down the line in either one of those two categories. You kind of have to mingle the two when those two really don't coincide with each other. But I mean, it's tough.
I mean, this nation is certainly one that's always been divided, and none more so when it comes to this issue. I mean, I think it's not so much we can break it down with a lot of demographics. I think it's as simple as going onto social media, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Facebook, whether it be Instagram or Snapchat. There are hundreds of millions of people that have very wide range of opinions on this. I would say I think more so of it are against the separation of children from their families. I think it's one of those things to where, yes, we need to allow due process to be made, but at what expense does that come when you separate a child from his family, especially when they're younger than a toddler? I mean, they're not going to remember who their parents look like. I mean, it's almost it's hard to imagine that even happening. When you look at the footage, it's frightening to see. But I mean, it's just a very complicated issue, and I would say a majority of the people are against it. But I mean, there's only so much we can do.
That's just a question. I think that's an opinionated question, just
Yeah.
because it's very it depends. As a news person, I think I'm sort of sorry. I'm sort of not left leaning or right leaning, so I don't really. I think sort of working in the news department, we don't really have an opinion yet, but yeah.
I think they're running the newscast while we're doing
Oh,
it.
okay. I'm sorry. I thought y'all were going on to another question.
No, it's okay.
One thing I do want to mention just about the border specifically, something interesting to Texas State, we actually have a lot of our students here. What's the profession where you dig up balloons? Oh, what is that called? Paleontologists?
Paleontologists and archaeologists.
Archaeologists, thank you. The archaeologist students here at Texas State actually, there's articles of it. You can research it on your own. But students, so what's happening at the border is people die trying to cross the border, and the people who work alongside the border don't know where that individual came from. They don't have a name. They don't have any identification on that person. So they're just burying those people left and right because they're just dying trying to get into the country. It's really sad. And students here at Texas State have actually been able to uncover those bodies, try and identify who they are, and reunite those people with their families, which is something super touching. That's just home to Texas State, something that's like personal for us here. But
it certainly shows that we still have humanity left.
Exactly. I mean, that's just something that's wow. I mean, I was taken back by that. I didn't realize that it was that intense down there. But
yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing all of these for us. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Texas State University, right there.